The bright lights of the CBS studio buzzed with anticipation as the audience settled into their seats for a special episode of Gayle King Live. It was a crisp autumn morning in New York City, and the energy in the room was electric, fans clutching coffee cups, whispers rippling through the crowd like waves. Gayle King, the queen of morning television, sat poised at her sleek glass desk, her signature warm smile masking the sharp intellect that had made her a household name. Today, her guest was none other than Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, there to promote her new memoir, Winds of Change. A raw account of her journey from Hollywood actress to royal outsider and now, a vocal advocate for women's rights and mental health. Meghan entered the stage to thunderous applause, her elegant black pantsuit hugging her figure with effortless grace. She waved to the crowd, her smile genuine and radiant, as if the weight of the world's scrutiny had never touched her. Gayle rose to greet her with a hug, the cameras capturing every moment in high definition. "Welcome, Meghan! It's an honor to have you here," Gayle said, her voice smooth as silk. The audience cheered louder, some holding signs that read, "We stand with Meghan." The atmosphere felt celebratory, almost familial, like a reunion of old friends. But as Meghan took her seat on the plush couch, adjusting her microphone, no one in that studio could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. What started as a routine promo chat would soon spiral into one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime TV history. And what happened next? It left the entire nation talking. As the applause died down, Gayle leaned in, her eyes sparkling with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "Meghan, your book is already a bestseller. You dived deep into your experiences with the royal family, the media frenzy, and your advocacy work. What inspired you to bear it all now?" Meghan nodded thoughtfully, her posture relaxed. "Gayle, it's about owning my story. For too long, others have tried to define me, through headlines, rumors, or assumptions. This book is my way of saying, this is who I am, flaws and all. And it's for every woman who's ever felt silenced." The audience murmured in approval, a few nods and soft claps echoing through the room. Other co-hosts, veteran journalist Norah O'Donnell and lifestyle expert Sarah Gilbert, smiled from their seats, ready to chime in with lighter questions about Meghan's life in California with Prince Harry and their children. But then, Gayle's expression shifted ever so slightly, a flicker of something sharper crossing her face. She glanced at her notes, then back at Meghan. "That's powerful. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. You've positioned yourself as this fierce advocate for mental health and equality, yet some critics, and even some of your former colleagues, say your time in the royal family was more about personal gain than real change. How do you respond to accusations that you're using your platform for self-promotion rather than genuine activism?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. The studio fell into a brief, uneasy silence. Meghan's smile faltered for a split second, her fingers tightening around the armrest of the couch. The audience shifted uncomfortably, whispers starting up again. Norah exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, who looked like she wanted to jump in but held back. Behind the scenes, producers in the control room leaned forward, sensing the ratings gold. "But Meghan?" She composed herself quickly, her voice steady. "Gayle, I appreciate the question, but let's clarify. My advocacy isn't new. From my work with the UN before the royals to now, it's always been about lifting others up. If sharing my story helps even one person feel less alone, that's real change." Gayle nodded, but her eyes narrowed. And just as the tension seemed to ease, she doubled down in a way no one saw coming. The co-host tried to steer the conversation back to safer waters. Sarah interjected with a nervous laugh. "Meghan, tell us about Archie's latest adventures. Kids are the best distraction from all this heavy stuff, right?" The audience chuckled lightly, grateful for the breather. Meghan smiled warmly, launching into a sweet anecdote about her son's love for the outdoors. "He's got this boundless energy, always exploring. It reminds me to stay grounded amid the chaos." Gayle listened politely, but her posture had changed. She was leaning forward now, like a predator sizing up its prey. As Meghan wrapped up the story, Gayle cut in smoothly, her tone laced with a subtle edge. "That's adorable. Family is everything, isn't it? But speaking of family, you've been vocal about the toxic dynamics in the royal institution, accusing them of racism and neglect. Yet you've also profited immensely from that same institution: titles, wealth, global fame. Doesn't that smack of hypocrisy? How can you criticize a system you willingly benefited from, while now building your brand on its downfall? The words landed like a slap. Meghan's eyes widened briefly, a flash of hurt crossing her features before she masked it with resolve. The audience gasped audibly, some in shock, others in agreement. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, while a man nearby pulled out his phone, discreetly starting to record. Nora shifted in her seat, murmuring, "Gayle, maybe we can." But Gayle waved her off with a casual hand, her focus locked on Meghan. The Duchess took a deep breath, her voice trembling just enough to reveal the vulnerability beneath her poise. "Gayle, with all due respect, benefiting from a system doesn't mean you can't call out its flaws. I entered that world with hope, but what I experienced, the isolation, the scrutiny, the racial undertones, it nearly broke me. Speaking out isn't about profit, it's about preventing others from suffering the same." The camera operators zoomed in, capturing the subtle quiver in Meghan's lip, the way her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Producers backstage were in a frenzy, one whispering urgently into a headset, "Keep rolling, this is viral material." The air in the studio thickened, the hum of the lights suddenly louder in the growing silence. But Gayle wasn't done. She pressed on, her questions turning personal in a twist that stunned everyone. And what she said next? It pushed Meghan to the brink. Meghan leaned back slightly, as if creating physical distance from the verbal assault. "I think we're veering off track here. This interview was supposed to be about my book, not a trial." Gayle smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, but it is about your book, Meghan. You dedicate chapters to breaking free from oppression, yet you've aligned yourself with powerful Hollywood elites who perpetuate the very inequalities you claim to fight. Take your Netflix deal. Millions for a docuseries that many call self-indulgent. Is that activism, or just savvy business?" The accusation hung heavy, and now the audience was divided. Some booed softly, others applauded Gayle's boldness. Sarah tried again to intervene, her voice awkward. "Hey, let's remember, Meghan's work with Archewell has helped so many causes, mental health initiatives, women's shelters." But Gayle ignored her gaze fixed on Meghan like a laser. Meghan's cheeks flushed, a mix of anger and frustration bubbling up. She glanced at the audience, seeing the mix of sympathetic faces and skeptical ones, phones now openly filming. Her mind raced. Should she stay composed, or fight back? The Duchess had faced tabloids, paparazzi, even palace intrigue, but this felt different, a betrayal from someone she'd considered an ally in the media world. "Gayle, I've always admired your journalism, but this feels like an ambush. My foundation has donated millions to real causes, not for show. And yes, I have a platform now, earned through pain and perseverance. Questioning my motives based on rumors? That's not journalism, that's character assassination." The words echoed, sharp and unyielding. Nora nodded subtly in support, but the damage was done. The studio air crackled with tension, the audience holding their collective breath. Producers signaled frantically from offstage, one mouthing, "Cut to commercial?" But Gayle, sensing the moment's power, leaned in closer. "Ambush? Or just hard questions you don't like?" And in that instant, Meghan's patience snapped, but not in the way anyone expected. What she did next turned the entire show upside down. The escalation hit a fever pitch as Meghan stood up slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a sound that cut through the murmurs like a knife. The cameras swiveled to follow her, operators exchanging wide-eyed glances. "I came here in good faith, Gayle, to share my story and inspire others. But if this is how you use your platform, to twist facts and humiliate guests for clicks, then I'm done." The audience erupted, gasps, scattered applause, even a few tears from fans in the back. Gayle froze for a beat, her confident facade cracking as she stammered, "Meghan, wait, let's discuss this like adults." But the Duchess was already unclipping her mic, her movements deliberate and dignified. Nora and Sarah looked horrified, Sarah whispering, "This is bad." As security personnel hovered at the edges of the set, unsure whether to intervene. Behind the scenes, the control room was chaos. Phones ringing off the hook, social media alerts pinging as clips began circulating in real time. Hashtag Meghan walks out is trending already, one producer yelped. Meghan paused at the edge of the stage, turning back to face the cameras one last time. Her voice, though steady, carried a tremor of raw emotion. To everyone watching, don't let anyone diminish your truth. Advocacy isn't about perfection, it's about courage. And sometimes, that means walking away from toxicity. The words landed like a mic drop, the audience splitting into cheers and stunned silence. Gayle sat there, mouth agape, as Meghan exited stage left, the door closing with a finality that reverberated through the room. But this was just the beginning of the fallout. What happened in the aftermath shocked the world even more. The studio lights dimmed as the CBS crew scrambled to cut to commercial, the echo of Meghan Markle's heels still ringing in the stunned silence of "Gayle King live!" The audience sat frozen, some clutching their phones, frantically uploading clips of Meghan's dramatic exit to X and TikTok. The hashtags #Meghan walks out and #Gayle vs Meghan were already climbing the trending charts, with thousands of posts dissecting every word, every glance. Backstage, producers were in full damage control mode, barking orders into headsets while Gayle King sat at her desk, her face a mix of defiance and unease. Nora O'Donnell and Sarah Gilbert exchanged panicked looks, their attempts to salvage the moment drowned out by the chaos. But what happened next would turn this television moment into a cultural firestorm. And the question on everyone's mind? Would Gayle double down, or would Meghan's parting words redefine the narrative? As the show resumed post-commercial, Gayle faced the camera with a forced smile, her usual poise strained. "Well, folks, that was unexpected," she began, her voice carrying a hint of sarcasm that didn't land well. The audience murmured, some booing softly, others still reeling from Meghan's speech about courage and toxicity. Meghan chose to leave rather than engage in tough questions, and that's her right. But I stand by asking what many are thinking. Can you claim to fight for change while profiting from the systems you criticize? The words were meant to reclaim control, but they fell flat. Nora jumped in, her tone diplomatic but firm. "I think what Meghan was saying, Gayle, is that personal attacks don't advance the conversation. Her work speaks for itself. Archwell's funding for women's shelters, for example." Sarah nodded vigorously, adding, "Yeah, and her books inspiring so many." "Maybe we got off track here." The audience clapped lightly, but the tension was palpable. A man in the third row whispered to his neighbor, "Gayle went too far." Phones kept recording, capturing every awkward second. And backstage? A producer hissed into a headset, "We're hemorrhaging goodwill. Someone get Gayle to pivot." But Gayle wasn't backing down, yet. Meanwhile, Meghan had left the studio, escorted by her team through a back exit to avoid the paparazzi already swarming outside. In the car, she stared out the window, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. Her publicist, sitting beside her, was already fielding calls from CNN, BBC, and Vogue, all clamoring for a statement. "Meghan, that was iconic, but we need to control the narrative now," the publicist urged. Meghan shook her head, her voice quiet but resolute. "No spin. Let people see the truth. I meant every word I said." Back at her Montecito home, she'd soon sit down with Harry, who'd watched the interview live and was fuming. "They tried to tear you down, Meg," he'd say, pulling her into a hug. "But you stood your ground." Little did they know, the internet was already erupting, with ex-posts splitting into two camps, those hailing Meghan as a queen of dignity and others accusing her of dodging accountability. But a single tweet from an unexpected source was about to change everything. Back in the studio, Gayle pushed forward, pivoting to a lighter segment about holiday recipes with Sarah, but the audience wasn't buying it. Their energy had shifted. Half were still buzzing about Meghan, checking their phones for updates. A viral clip of her exit captioned, "Don't mess with Meghan," had already racked up 2 million views. Then, mid-segment, a producer slipped Gayle a note. Her eyes widened briefly as she read it, then she forced a chuckle. Well, folks, seems like we've stirred up quite the conversation online. Let's just say this isn't over yet. The note? A tweet from Oprah Winfrey, Gayle's longtime friend, had just dropped. Truth matters. Courage matters. Proud of that Meghan Markle for standing tall today. Hashtag winds of change. The audience gasped as Gayle read it aloud, her voice catching slightly. Nora and Sarah exchanged stunned glances. Oprah's public support for Meghan was a game-changer, a subtle but undeniable rebuke of Gayle's approach. The control room exploded with chatter. Oprah just threw shade. This is going nuclear. And as the show wrapped, Gayle's smile was tighter than ever. What would she do next to save face? The fallout spilled into the evening news cycle. CNN ran a segment titled, Meghan's Mic Drop, Heroic or Hypersensitive? With pundits debating whether Gayle's questions were fair journalism or a personal vendetta. On X, fans posted montages of Meghan's exit synced to dramatic music, while critics called her overly dramatic and allergic to scrutiny. A surprising voice joined the fray, Viola Davis, who posted, When a black woman speaks her truth, it's not drama, it's power. Go, Meghan. The post went viral, amassing 500,000 likes in an hour. Backstage at CBS, Gayle met with her team, who were blunt. You're trending for all the wrong reasons. We need a response, or this could tank your credibility. Gayle, usually unshakable, looked shaken. I was doing my job, she insisted, but doubt crept into her voice. Had she crossed a line? And more importantly, would Meghan respond, or let the moment speak for itself? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. Meghan, now back in California, posted a single Instagram story, a quote from her book, Winds of Change, overlaid on a serene ocean photo. Your voice is your power. Never let it be silenced. No direct mention of Gayle, no petty jab, just a quiet, powerful statement. The post garnered millions of likes, with comments flooding in. Queen Meghan! Gayle owes you an apology. But not everyone was on her side. A prominent conservative commentator tweeted, Meghan can't handle the heat. If you write a tell-all, expect tough questions. The divide grew sharper, with late-night hosts already prepping jokes for their monologues. Stephen Colbert, on his show that evening, quipped, Gayle King versus Meghan Markle? I haven't seen a showdown this intense since my dentist appointment last week. The audience laughed, but the subtext was clear. This was no ordinary TV spat. It was a clash of values, power, and truth. And just when it seemed the story couldn't get bigger, a leaked email from a CBS insider changed everything. The email, sent from a junior producer to a colleague, surfaced on X late that night. It read, Gayle was told to push Meghan hard for ratings. Execs wanted fireworks. She didn't expect Meghan to walk out. The leak sent shockwaves through social media, with hashtag CBS scandal trending alongside hashtag Meghan walks out. Fans raged. So this was a setup? Others defended Gayle. She's a journalist, not a puppet. Meghan just couldn't handle it. The next morning, Meghan's team issued a brief statement. The Duchess remains committed to her work and values. She thanks her supporters and asks for respectful dialogue moving forward. Gayle, meanwhile, stayed silent, a rare move for the veteran host. Rumors swirled that CBS was prepping a formal apology, while others claimed Gayle was planning a follow-up show to address the controversy. The nation was hooked, waiting for the next move. Would Meghan return to the spotlight, or had Gayle's ambush changed her approach forever? And what was in that leaked email that no one was talking about yet? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Epilogue. The Meghan-Gayle clash became more than a TV moment, it became a mirror for society's divides. Was Meghan a beacon of courage, standing up to a media machine that thrives on conflict? Or was Gayle just doing her job, holding a public figure accountable? The internet war raged on, with X posts and Reddit threads dissecting every angle. Meghan's book sales soared, and her memoir topped charts, proving her voice resonated. Gayle's reputation took a hit, but her loyal fans rallied, praising her for fearless journalism. The real lesson? Truth and power are messy, and no one walks away unscathed. So, what do you think? Who was right? Should Meghan have stayed, or was her exit the ultimate power move? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't miss what happens next in this unfolding saga.